Today we've got a takeover episode. Wah, wah. This particular takeover is coming straight from a new podcast I've created called the Connect to Market Pod. And it's coming straight to you, straight to your ears. You don't even have to click on anything. Now, Connect to Market, what is this, Casey? It's a new pod, but it's also a community of marketing leaders. And if you like what you hear or you want to join the conversation, come on over. Head over to connecttomarket.com. Connecttomarket.com. All right, let's do this.
The attribution is kind of a broken bad word because it implies credit, not collaboration. But, B2B go to market, it's a team sport. We treat attribution like it's a scoreboard, and we create unnecessary tension, which results in wasted time and wasted money and misalignment with our other groups. I think if all tides rise ships, right? Like, I think if we start to look at lift and how that impacts our pipeline, especially directly with your sales and your operations people, you'll see a much higher success rate.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. Boom. There it is. Okay, guys, let's do this. I'm excited to introduce another member from our community who is an absolute badass. And we're going to dive in. We're just going to open up that brain. We're going to crack into it like an egg and get after it. If you've been in a breakout session with this guest, you're going to know. You probably have been taking notes left and right when he was chatting or sharing some ideas for solutions. But who is he, Casey? Who is he? Well, he is both entrepreneur and marketing leader and thought leader, active member of the community, digital strategy, campaign creation, orchestration. He's been both agency side and client side, lots of extensive history in search, optimization. And I more than any other guest and person I've talked to, the idea of like connecting the dots, really excited to chat with him. VP of Marketing at Beryllium InfoSec, the makers of QuickTrack. Cofield, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Casey. That was so nice of you for all the kind words. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you've been doing a lot of things. Maybe you just need to take a breath, but I guess you just got back from the beach. So we're going to launch into this thing. And in order for me to ask my first question, I need to go ahead and put on my giant foam finger and ask you, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
Sure. I'm going to take it back from a psychological standpoint. I'm going to answer that with empathy. I think empathy is the number one thing. So I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. Civilization has advanced by the amount of tasks we've automated, right? Automation is a driving force of human progress. And so what does that really mean? So if you think about it, like you jump in the car and you head home, we don't really even remember anymore from point A to point B how we got there, right? We automate it. And I think that as a civilization, that's how we've advanced, right? Through that. And if we think about that in a marketing aspect, I always think about it back, I studied psychology a lot growing up, and I always think about it of categorization, right? Like when we're children, we think about, what is a dog and what is a cat? And we learn the differences between those two. And then we get introduced to a sheep, and then we have this whole new category now that we have to build in our brain. I think having large amounts of empathy makes you a good marketer, and it allows you to see lots of different subcategories of groups. And I think at the end of the day, connecting one-to-one or one-to-few or one-to-many really comes down to finding those specific groups, figuring out which ones have the best return, and then layering on, everything from the data to who's going to have the best return to the tactics and the strategies beyond that.
Man, empathy as the great unlock. And I love that you shared that automation is what has helped us advance, right? So I think it's too easy to be one of those people on LinkedIn going like, oh, the MQL is dead, or automation is bad, or automation is good. You're like, hey, man, this is great. Our world has improved, but we got to make sure we unlock it. How is empathy just like you either have it, you don't? You're either a psychopath or you're a great marketer, or can you grow that?
I don't know. I think it's a 50-50 split. I think some people are just born with it. I know for me, that was what I think drives me to be a good marketer is just trying to really put myself in other people's shoes and really relate with them. If you think about that, you have to think about the customer journey. It's very long, and the more that you can understand, that process, I think the better chance you have to connect with those end users. And at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do, right? Like, why does B2B fail? 90% of the time, it's the message. And why? It's because our brains are fast and lazy, right? And so I think, the better we can invoke that, you know, quick that click whirl effect of catching someone's attention in a vast sea of other people trying to do the exact same thing is where we really start to pull them in and start to engage with them.
Tell me about that fast and lazy. What about that contributes to that message just being off so much of the time?
I think it's a lot of times we just don't take the time, especially in B2B or SaaS, we don't take the time up front because we're just trying so hard to jump right into the metrics or the tactics. We don't take the time to really learn the audience, right? Like I said, I mean, categorizing and understanding like who are our best fit customers, what are their attributes, and what do they really care about? Like what kind of pressure do they have? What is their boss putting pressure on them about? What questions are they trying to answer to their customers? And I think understanding that up front is really an important foundation. And a lot of times I think marketers skip over that part. They just go straight for the tactics or straight for the new buzzword. And we miss out on the opportunity to just connect as humans.
Almost that like I've seen this, classically with relationships, with the idea of like it's almost like we're objectifying our customer, being like they're a square object that can give me money and convert in this process. And not realizing, yeah, even the idea of like they have a boss who's probably writing them pretty hard to deliver something. What is that something? And if you're not contributing to that, you're just interrupting them and preventing them from getting their job done.
I mean, look at the success of something like TikTok or YouTube. Like we're not even using search the same anymore. I think like if we look at SEO for instance, traffic is down. 60% of B2B searches don't result in a click anymore, and 40% of those nearly all go to YouTube. And even the first organic result is below the fold now. People want to be fed information, right? They want it to be easy. We're not utilizing gated content the same way anymore. We want to see open, active, that information be given to us right up front so we can build trust through that user journey right up front.
Yeah, man. I used to be all about the gated content. I remember having debates on my other podcasts and like just going to the mattresses and battle on gate everything. Just don't make it, annoying. Just make them little light gates. But yeah, I mean, these days it really has shifted to the bro, I don't want to fill out. I don't want to give you my email, you know. I, like I just don't. I don't even want to give you a fake one. I'm just not going to do it, you know.
But I mean, I think that's okay. I mean, like, that's why I think that we've seen such a growing rise in account-based marketing. And that's something that I know I focused a lot of my energy on. And, account-based marketing can be a lot of things to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's just really good marketing. It's really just taking the time to align, the right content with the right person and really understand what problem are we solving at each stage of their journey, right? And the journey's long too, right? I mean, at minimum, it's 15 to 20 touch points are necessary. I know specifically for B2B SaaS on average, that lead conversion rate is less than 3% for B2B SaaS. It can't always be reduced to just the sources of where they're coming from. But at the same time, like we have to take the time to understand that user journey and what content that we're feeding them at each one of those to keep pushing them down and personalizing it throughout that journey. And I think that's why we're seeing such a huge rise in account-based marketing now.
I don't think I've heard it described so simply. I think a lot of times people when they call up the magic spell, that which is ABM, they like to make it seem really complicated, like it's a magic spell that you don't understand. But to say, hey, man, this is just good marketing, like having that message even more customized for that individual because you know more about them and you're less focused on like everyone else. Um, yeah, and it as almost as a response to the automation and as a response to the noise that's out there.
Okay.
How do you like to execute that though, right? 'Cause I think the magic, and I think, my good buddy Adam Needles has said this too, like, man, execution on ABM is where it's at, and if you fail that, and GTM too, like, you gotta execute, but, like, that is where it gets is it trickier there, or is it also simple, like, we're just overthinking it?
Oh, no, I think it depends on where you are at in the inflection point of your company, right? Especially if we're at, a founder-led company, you come in, you try to build a program like that. I mean, the first thing is alignment. You gotta get alignment across the board from everybody from the head of the sales team to your customer operations people, and that's where you fail if you don't. Like, you all have to really understand and agree, this is our ideal company profile. These are the people that we're going after. These are the attributes and then understand what that user journey looks like. And it's different. It's different for each one of those subgroups that we talked about, figuring out, hey, from awareness to consideration action. I think I mentioned this a second ago, but like, it takes 15 to 20 touch points right off the bat just to get them to have brand recall. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times it's expectations too. I think a lot of people, when they come in and pitch ABM, especially to a founder-led company, they're expecting, a quick turnaround, especially in the first 6 months to just start building pipeline and seeing a revenue return from that. I think that, you're not really going to see that in the first 6 months unless you're really focused on maybe like customer expansion programs or a pipeline acceleration program. You know, New business it takes 3 to 6 months just to get brand recall right off the bat. And so if you're going after, cold accounts that, are your best fit types of customers, you have to take that into consideration when you're pushing them down that user journey, that it's going to take so many touch points and so much time for them to understand and associate you with solving their problem. Then you're going to have the opportunity to say, okay, now that we've both agree, do you actually have that problem right now in this point in time? And do you have the budget to be able to solve it right now as well?
Yeah, that's a valid question. Do you have the budget to solve this problem? Do you have the problem? And then do you have the budget to solve the problems?
And there's a ton of other attributes that go into it too. I think, a good ABM program just starts though with connecting from, you know, a person to a piece or to solving a problem, right? Like, and understanding their user journey more than anything. And having some data points on like what your best fit customers are too. I don't think a lot of times we take enough time to understand like not just who are our best revenue customers, but who are the best fit in the sense of we actually solve a problem for them and for their customers that they provide services for as well.
Hmm. I get the sense that a lot of people, and because I've done this, sort of tiptoe around that part, the best fit. And then you wonder why churn happens because they're just kind of trying something out. They probably don't. I mean, sometimes people, I think we give buyers both not enough credit, but too much credit. Sometimes they don't even know why they're buying it either, you know? And so if they're not your best fit, they may still buy it and then you'll be bewildered when they leave.
I think another reason that ABM can fail, especially in an early organization or a founder-led organization, is it comes down to attribution, right? The attribution is kind of a broken bad word because it implies credit, not collaboration. But B2B go to market, it's a team sport. We treat attribution like it's a scoreboard, and we create unnecessary tension, which results in wasted time and wasted money and misalignment with our other groups. I think if all tides rise ships, right? Like I think if we start to look at lift and how that impacts our pipeline, especially directly with your sales and your operations people, you'll see a much higher success rate.
Hmm. You know, this used to be the thing that we complained about 10, 15 years ago. Oh man, and I think it was at the time, there were many marketers who were just making things pretty and they were wasting money on brand. I'm doing quote fingers for those listening, right? So we had like kind of the old school marketers, but then we had the old school salespeople who were like, I'm not going to rely on marketing. I'm not going to, they're my enemy, right? And it's almost like both of those groups have since retired. And so I'm definitely getting a sense that more and more now we have the marketers who actually want to collaborate, the sales who actually want to collaborate, and you're right, the wasted time. It's just I don't have time for this.
Well, you have to. I mean, if not, you're just gonna end up creating more campaigns, more emails, more ads, but the reality is that it's not gonna result in pipeline, and usually it's gonna result in burnout. And it really needs to be whether you're doing account-based marketing, or just paid media or search, it's a team sport, and when it's really aligning with those groups I talked about. I know, like in my current organization, the last organization I came from, I worked directly with the head of my sales department in both, and we aligned and created and looked at what is actually driving pipeline and what steps and points are we each touching that customer at different points, and how are we progressing those deals forward. A lot of times I've been in other organizations or helped, in the agency world, and come in where, sales didn't see the value in sharing the stages that it takes to progress a client forward. And what they didn't really take into account, they just thought, hey, marketing is going to do their own thing in a silo, and they're just going to bring me those leads, and they're either good or bad. Not realizing that data is key. That information to understand like what makes a good customer and a bad customer, and feed that back into whatever tactics and strategies you're utilizing, really the key source of that. And I've seen it done really well, and I've seen it done really bad, and everybody point the finger. But when they align together and really realize that that's what it takes to move the ball forward together, that it's a team sport, and it's not just, hey, I brought this deal in, or hey, I brought that deal in. Yeah, it's, hey, we're working together to move it from one point to another, is where I really see success.
Yeah. How do I mean, if I would ask you, what are the core strategies you need to think about when you're deploying ABM, when you're actually putting it into practice?
Sure, I'll give you some of my top ones. I think, like I said, is having a very gathering data, both internal data and external data, right? I think the first thing is just sitting together in a group and saying, who are our target customers, who are our target companies we want to go after, what are the attributes of them, and really defining that on paper, and all agreeing and aligning. And alignment is a big part of that just throughout the process, right? And so once you have that, it's okay. Now let's visualize that user journey for each one of these groups. Who are they internally? What's that buying committee really look like? Who are their titles? And what do they care about? What does that buyer journey look like at each stage of that funnel? And awareness, what kind of questions we need to answer to make them aware that we just exist in the world. In that consideration phase, what doors are we shutting? What questions are we answering for them? What are we empowering them with content wise to go and share with the group? And then when it's time to make the decision, what's our differentiator? What makes us different than everybody else? And how can we make it easy for them to make the decision? And how can we be there for them when they're ready to make that decision too? I mean, the majority of decisions now aren't made, from when that salesperson first starts talking to somebody all the way to the end. They're made 80% of the time way before that, right? In that dark funnel that we don't necessarily see when they're doing research, they're reading reviews online, and we need to make sure that we're equipping them with everything that you need to answer those questions, and that providing them with the information that we are the solution to that problem. From a tool standpoint, I think you have to also know what your goals are and how you're going to measure them. I see a lot of ABM programs fail because they just don't know how to measure, and a lot of it comes down to attribution, or not having the right tools in place, or budget restraints can be a big piece of that. I mean, you have to be really careful about when you start to do ABM that you're defining a program that's cost effective, that you're ready to step into based on the inflection point that you're at in your company, right? And that can be doing something small, just like taking a small list of under 100 accounts that you want to go after, and some easy cost effective tactics, all the way down to, running more of a multi-campaign, multi-touch point, looking at multiple attributions throughout that type of campaign, to push somebody down the funnel. So those are very different. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on ABM is this or ABM is that, and really stop to think and forget to think that it's actually, not just a tactic, it's a mindset that we all have to kind of adopt, and then define programs around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do we get wrong the most, do you think, with ABM?
I think its attribution is the biggest, probably that and not defining a clear ICP up front is the other part. A lot of times I think, you might sell an executive on, oh, wow, this sounds fancy. This sounds like this new buzzword I want to get excited about. And then it's time for participation and everybody needs to really sit down and crunch the numbers and find those attribution points. And everybody is like, oh, marketing will just kind of take care of that. Well, no, sales needs to be a big part of that because we need to know, what have you seen? What have you heard through that sales journey? Customer success has to be a part of that. We need to see what problems we've seen, what makes a really good customer good and what do those attributes look like? Uh, and a lot of times in a founder-led company, sometimes the founder is the only one that has that information and he's wearing so many hats or her that it's hard to see past that because they're doing so many things all at once.
Right. Hmm. Hmm. Where do you like to get your input from? You know?
I like to start, like I said, quantitative and qualitative. I want to have a center of truth, usually, whether that be, HubSpot or um, Salesforce. I want to be able to have that data 1 to 3 years if we have it. Sometimes you don't. I think the other is, it can be as simple as pulling data from something like LinkedIn or something as advanced of like a Zoom info. I just, you have to decide where we're going to be able to pull clean data and what does our data attribution process look like going forward? When are we going to update that information? Because that's going to end up being your North Star, right? Like, and telling you so much about who we're targeting and how we're targeting them. And if that information isn't collected and thought through up front, then you can have all the best tactics in the world, but they're going to fail because you're targeting the wrong group of people.
Yeah, so true, right? Hey, killer campaign, dude. Yeah, I got 0 like I got a ton of response from all the wrong people. Hey, we kept sales really busy with people who did not want to buy.
Totally.
Worst case scenario. Um, what's your take on the community? You've been in the community for a bit now, definitely building up the breakouts, and what's it been like for you?
I love it. I think that it is important. I think when you're a marketer, whether you're agency side or brand side, you've got lots of different ideas and you're so hungry to share them with everybody internally. I think in like more of an agency environment, you have others who welcome that. I think when you're brand side, a lot of the other departments, they want to get excited, but they don't really get it. Right. And so to have a community where you can come together and share those ideas, I'm a big believer in that, you can have a good idea and someone else can add so much to it and make it great. To be able to share those ideas and take them apart and put them back together again and take good ideas and make them great together is huge for me. Like I crave that. I look forward to when we meet on a consistent basis.
It's true, right? Like if you bring the good idea and it's those, I mean, some people, it's the wrong idea of like, I don't want to share this idea because someone will take it, or maybe the idea is perfect, but no, just a little, like, challenge it. Have someone beat it up. Have someone throw a zinger in there that maybe just a quick twist and it doubles everything.
Or just to even justify your thought process or even your feelings sometimes too. I mean, like we a lot of, marketing has so many little things that everybody else in an organization or even a client, they don't see, and so to have someone that you can share and help justify and just pat you on the back sometimes and say, wow, like look at the effort you put into that nobody else is ever going to see because they're just focused on the results. Um, it's just a huge, like, lift, of, "Wow, this is why I do this, and this is what keeps me driven to wanna continue to do this."
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, next question for you, like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know all these things? Can you take me back in time? Like little cold days? Did you know you're gonna be in marketing and crushing things?
I was definitely the kid that liked to take things apart and put them back together again to understand how they worked.
Yeah.
Early in my career, never thought in a million years I would get into marketing, but was very into psychology early on. Studied psychology on a personal level for as long as I can remember. Needed to know why I was so goofy. So and then I think I developed into trying to understand other people and really trying to grow that empathy that I talked about early on.
Yeah. No, so did it started with, like, understanding you, and then eventually it's like,
That's really where it spawned from. I wanted to be a better version of myself, and I thought that, the best way to do that was understand, well, let's deconstruct myself a little bit. Why do I do the things that I do? And I think it kind of gave me somewhat of a, for lack of a better word, a superpower of starting to see, well, this is why other people do the things they do. And that really intrigued me because it started to make me realize that, you can help lead people to do the same thing in certain aspects. And I think one of my mentors told me with great power comes great responsibility, right? We've all heard that. He made me promise, like I was very lucky that I had, really good mentors growing up. He made me promise that I would use my powers for good and not evil. And he really helped me develop those. And so from there, I kind of fell into marketing. I started early in my career, kind of at the bottom level, working for some bigger brands in the customer service department, and then eventually I became the guy who taught people how the internet worked. Um, got really lucky and fell into one of the first social media agencies when brands first started to utilize social media. Got to work with some of the biggest brands in the world. I actually worked on Facebook's Facebook, believe it or not. And you name a brand at some point, I've probably worked on it at some point. And so it was kind of the Wild West back then for a really long time, and then transitioned into my own agency and did that for a really long time and really enjoyed it. And now I've gone brand side. I'm a family man. I got 3 kiddos. And so as much as I love the agency world, sometimes, that takes a lot of time away from your work-life balance. And so I am brand side now, committed to really just focusing on one brand. And at the time, right now, I'm working in B2B SaaS, specifically for a company that works in compliance with the Department of Defense contractors. And I love it. I get to do something different every day. I always get to solve some kind of out of the box problem. And yeah, that's really why I love to do this.
Yeah, the problem solving aspect, right? Hey, how early did that, like, trying to improve yourself thing start? Because that kind of self-actualization or whatever you might wanna call it, that doesn't not everyone even has that at 50, and let alone, early on. Did maybe was that just how you are? You just kind of were always trying to analyze, or
Well, no, I think that stems from something early in childhood. I grew up in kind of a tough environment growing up. And that caused me to have to think very differently than peers around me at a very young age. And because of that, though, I didn't want it to hold me back. I wanted to advance. And I think the best way to do that is to really just understand it and figure out how to conquer things I wasn't great at and really feed the things that I wanted to see in myself to be better in. And then that kind of stemmed into, oh, wow, like there's this whole discipline of people, marketers who look at how to push or pull people in different directions, both for positive and negative. And I think I got really obsessed with the positive aspect of that. And I really got drawn into that and the tactics too. Um, it was never boring, right? Especially in the agency world. There's always something new, some new problem to solve, some new adventure to be a part of. And to me, that really helped develop me as an individual.
That's powerful, man. You could have easily been like, "Yeah, man, life sucks. I'm just gonna complain," but you were like, "Nope, let me figure this out for myself, for other people." And then, yeah, lo and behold, like the skies part, and you're like, "Wow, marketing, we're constantly trying to," it's interesting. Not only are we trying to, analyze, make things better and help people out, finding solutions to help them, but it's also kind of a little bit apolitical in its purest form where it's not really my idea or your idea. Like, I just like, let's test them both. Whichever one works, let's go with that. Like, we're here for the results.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. I mean, a lot of times I think a lot of people don't realize that us as marketers, like, we're just trying to guess intelligently, right? We're trying to take all the information that we've consumed, all all the things that we've seen work and then didn't work, and we're making a really educated guess. And some of us are really great at that, and sometimes we fail too. You know what I mean? And that's okay. It's about how we learn and pick ourselves up from that. I think that really makes us great marketers.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Man, powerful stuff. You never know. Like marketing, we get kind of deep. Sales guys are talking about that the yacht party they went to, but marketing, we're like, oh, let's analyze our childhood to better understand our campaigns. Man, I love this community, man. I have a my next question for you is a bit of a hypothetical question. Are you prepared for this? Are you ready? Okay. You see, I may or may not have a time machine up here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And you say you come visit, we finally get inbound back to Boston where it belongs, HubSpot. and or some kind of business thing. Come visit, drive north, hit up New Hampshire. I may have this time machine in the backyard covered in a tarp. So we use this time machine, but it's a particular kind of machine where you go back in time to like early coal days, like just cracked into your 20s, probably right around there, and you get to meet yourself and have a conversation. What do you tell yourself?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think I would try to tell myself you don't have to try to be the best at everything all at once. To slow down and just enjoy the ride more than anything. I know early on in my career, I'm a competitive person, and when I worked for one of the first agencies that I ever worked for, it was highly competitive. If you worked in an agency or environment, they put you in what's called a pit, and there's usually 40 or 50 of you all, like kill or be killed kind of scenario. And I think that I kind of fed off that for a little bit there of like, wow, I love this and I want to be the best at this and I want to be able to, showcase how well I can, deconstruct a brand and put it back together in a way that no one's ever thought about. And that really drove me for a really long time. I think later in life, if I could go back in time now, I would just say, hey, slow down, that you don't have to always do that. And sometimes, enough is enough in the sense of like, you are already doing more than you could ever imagine that you are doing. Take time to enjoy it and just slow down a little bit and really focus on what really matters, and whether that be family or self-improvement and things like that. I think there were a lot of times in my career early on where I was so focused on wanting to, be the best and things like that, where I wish I would have just slowed down and taken time to really reflect on myself and just enjoy the ride for a little bit.
The natural follow-up question to that is, do you think you would listen to yourself?
Absolutely not. Older me would, but younger me probably not. It's one of those kind of things. Has anyone ever told you, you can only really be good at one thing? I think when a younger me would have been like, no, I can be great at lots of different things. But older me would definitely be like, yeah, there are only a handful of things that you can really be great at. I think you can try to do everything, but you're gonna fail. I think really putting your effort into some very specific things that you want to be great, whether that be great at marketing or being a great father or a great friend. Um, I think both of those are equally important. Having a work-life balance is something a lot of times we forget. And I think when we're older, we start to realize like time's fleeting. And, you know, at the end of the day, we have to look ourselves in the mirror, and really focusing on trying to be the best we can for other people, I think is something that we don't take enough time to think about. And if we did early in our career, I think we'd see a lot of residuals from that we didn't realize that we would get.
Yeah, 100%, man. I definitely have looked at past decades, and you're like, you know, what kind of business achievements did you made, and they were good, they were great, but like, yeah, but also my kids, had grew up, and there's it kind of it's interesting as you look back, the hindsight of what really is important, and hopefully you can evaluate that sooner, right? Do that test sooner and later, come up with the answer and the analysis so that you don't spend, do a whole waterfall thing, and then that's what happens. I mean, kids, they grow up, they leave, and then you're like, oh wait, oops, I screwed that up. Like, nope, adjust, adjust, adjust as it goes, man. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that person who had told you can only be good at one thing. Do you think that's true? Because I definitely don't. We already bump into we're like these marketing generalists, where we kind of have to do a lot and put our hands in things. But is there at the end of the day one thing that
I think you can only be very great at one thing. I think you can be good at lots of things. I think you're right. As a marketer, you have to kind of be a master of many different aspects. Um, but I think it's really about like marketing alone. I mean, there's so many types of marketing. There's so many tactics. There's new tactics. The search, just in general, is going through a huge shift right now with AI and everything in between. I think you can only really be great at one thing, and you can be good at lots of things, but I think you can only be really great at one thing.
what are you great at?
Oh man, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'd like to say marketing. I'd also like to say, being a dad and a significant other, but I can't tell you that I'm great at all of those things yet. I think that it's an ever changing, always working on thing. And I think I'm always trying to be better at all of those things.
Yeah, striving for greatness. What came to mind for me too, right? Because same, like I couldn't even tell you that I feel like I'm great at podcasting, even if I've done thousands of them or however many, because I'm always trying to learn.
That's a telltale sign of an artist right there, an artist mentality, right? And it's like you're never great at it in your own mind. I mean, people can tell you all the time. I can't tell you how many times. I think all marketing to some degree stems from some kind of creativity. And I think as an artist, no matter what your palette is or what your type of art you're focused on, a true artist, I think, was never really satisfied with their art, right? They're always trying to be better and achieve more and trying to look at it from a different way. But I think that's what kind of makes us great at what we're great at.
Yeah, it reminds me of like even Van Goghs and Picassos, and when they use the X-rays, they see paintings underneath the paintings,
Yeah,
which are probably also masterpieces.
I'm sure they were.
But he was like, yeah, nah, it was a draft.
Totally agree.
Oh man. Well, hey, if you want people to reach out and connect with you, where should they go? How do you want them to do that?
Find me on my LinkedIn, Cole Field on LinkedIn. I love to help. I love to make new friends. I love to connect with people and help solve problems. I think that is what has made me the most successful in my life. Is I was never the guy who would tell if it was time to move, I would bring the truck and the pizza. That served me both well and probably poorly in different aspects of my life. But no, realistically, I mean, I've always tried to have empathy for others, so I love that. So don't be a stranger, is what I would say.
Well, your empathy is inspiring. So, man, I appreciate you being on here, dude. Honestly, the word masterclass comes to mind. I probably need a better vocabulary, but like we have covered so much. Just the idea of avoiding the fast and lazy. Automation can be good, but like empathy, and then just really deploying ABM, good marketing. Do you have a problem? Do you have the budget to solve the problem? So many nuggets here today, man. I appreciate you coming on here.
Thanks for having me, Casey. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. And for those listening, if you freaking learned something, and I know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this with someone else. 1 person, 2 people, 3 people who is violating these things that maybe should be listening to this episode. We heard the 2 big mistakes are attribution and no ICP, or not putting enough time into that. Next time you encounter someone who's encountered that situation, throw them this episode, help them out. And definitely reach out to Cole. We'll put a link in the show notes if you can click right on through. And with that, Cole, thank you again, sir.
Thanks again, Casey.
All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.